At 24, Julian Newman's tragic fate is sadder than you think. Let's get right into this video. It caught my attention because if you guys don't know who Julian Newman is, he's kind of been in the content creator space on more the basketball side of things for a long time, but he's kind of just faded in, I don't want to say into irrelevancy, but his fall from grace has been very not tasteful. But let's see what's really going on. But if I had to guess right off the rip, he need to stop doing all that cringy shit with his family, bro. But I think that's my opinion. Let's see what's going on.
Wait, are you still traded for the NBA though?
You know, everybody got their path. Everybody got their, you know what I'm saying, their journey to get where they want to get to.
Just give it up, bro. Just give it up.
I'm doing it.
At 24 years old, Julian Newman's fate has become far sadder than most people ever imagined. Think about that for a second. 24 years old, that's the age when most basketball players are just hitting their prime. When most guys are on rookie contracts, grinding for rotation minutes, fighting for their spot on an NBA roster. That's when Luka Doncic was already a two-time All-Star. That's when Jaylen Brown was building toward a championship. At 24, Julian Newman is doing something very different. And here's the thing that makes this story hit harder than almost anything else in the history of youth basketball. This was not supposed to happen. This was not the plan. When Julian Newman was 11 years old, the entire country looked at him and made a collective decision. They decided they were watching a future star. The New York Times said it. ESPN said it. The biggest television shows in America said it. Millions of people online said it. They were all so certain. So what went wrong? How does one of the most famous young basketball players in the history of this sport end up here? That's exactly what we're about to break down. Because the full story of Julian Newman is not just about basketball. It's about what happens when the world builds a legend around a child before that child has had the chance to earn it. Stay with me, because this one goes deep. To understand what makes Julian Newman's story so unique, you have to understand just how early all of this started. We are not talking about a high school phenom who blew up junior year. We are not talking about a kid who went viral in middle school. Julian Newman was in the 5th grade, 11 years old.
Damn, that changes everything. I ain't gonna lie. This is all this nigga knows. Ball literally is life.
70 pounds, 4 feet, and 5 inches tall. And he was already starting for a high school varsity basketball team. His father, Jamie Newman, had taken a job coaching basketball and teaching history at Downey Christian School in Orlando, Florida in 2012. He brought Julian along. The middle school team lasted about 5 minutes. Julian was so far beyond those kids that the coaching staff moved him up to varsity almost immediately, where he competed night after night against players who were 16, 17, and 18 years old. Players who had years of physical development on him, players who outweighed him by 80 pounds. None of it mattered. Through his first 3 varsity starts, Julian averaged 12.4 points, 11 assists, and 4.3 steals per game. 11 years old, his jersey was so oversized he had to tighten the shoulders with a hair tie just to keep it on. He had to roll the waistband of his shorts so they wouldn't drag on the floor. He was still the best player out there. Jamie Newman sent a highlight reel to Max Preps. What happened next changed everything. Within days, the internet exploded. The New York Times ran a full feature. ESPN picked up the story, Sports Illustrated followed. People magazine sent a photographer to the gym. Julian appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres show, Good Morning America, the Steve Harvey show. He performed a halftime demonstration at an Orlando Magic NBA game and the arena lost its mind. The Tampa Bay Times,
I knew he had motion, but damn, this is a lot of new news to me.
Ran a headline calling him the most marketed 12-year-old basketball player in the world. They weren't wrong. And this is where the story gets complicated, because everything about that moment was real and manufactured at the exact same time. The skill was genuine. The handle was genuine. The court vision, the fearlessness, the scoring instinct, all of it was genuinely impressive for a player of any age, let alone a 5th grader. But Jamie Newman also understood exactly what he was doing from a marketing standpoint. He kept those highlight videos coming. He kept the cameras rolling. He kept Julian in front of every audience that would have him. And Jamie had been building toward this moment for a long time. By the time Julian was in the 5th grade and appearing on national television, his father had already spent years engineering his development. Julian's mother, Vivian, was a point guard herself who had played at University High School in Orlando before serving 4 years in the United States Navy. Basketball was in this family's bloodline on both sides, Julian began dribbling regulation-sized basketballs at 3 years old, not child-sized practice balls, regulation NBA basketballs. He was competing in recreational leagues against older kids before he reached elementary school, because Jamie Newman understood what every great development coach eventually learns, that playing up forces adaptation in ways that playing within your age group never can. As Julian got older, the training became elite level. Reports from that period describe Julian completing 200 free throws, 200 floaters, and 200 jump shots every single day at practice. Every single day. That is a professional caliber workload placed on a child's body and a child's mind. Jamie Newman was not raising a kid who happened to be good at basketball. He was building a basketball player from the ground up, the same way you would construct any serious long-term project with a foundation.
I think it was Project LeBron, but maybe more Project Kyrie if we comparing the size. But shit, Julian Newman's way shorter than Kyrie. Kyrie's like my height. Yeah, bro. He was Project Nate Robinson.
Played in the earliest possible years and built upon relentlessly from that point forward. There was nothing accidental about what Julian Newman became. Every element of his development, his environment, his exposure, and his image was intentional. And for a while, it worked exactly as designed. The world did not need much convincing. Now here's where the numbers start telling a really important story, because Julian didn't just ride the hype. He backed it up statistically for years.
Yeah, nigga, you throw the fucking basketball in my head mid-game, bro. It's gonna be a technical foul. Facts. I'm tackling, bro.
As a sixth grader in 2013 to 2014, he averaged 17.4 points, 9.8 assists, and 3.6 rebounds per game. As a seventh grader, he became the youngest player in recorded history to reach 1,000 career varsity points, hitting that milestone at just 13 years old. He finished that season averaging 19.8 points, 10.2 assists, and 4.3 rebounds. As an eighth grader, 23.9 points, 11.4 assists, 3.6 rebounds. Year after year, the numbers went up. The viral clips kept multiplying. In 2016, Julian faced off against Kyrie Walker at the MSHTV camp, one of the most high-profile youth basketball showcases in the country. Walker was a top-ranked recruit with offers from Kansas, Arkansas, and Arizona. That single highlight reel from their matchup generated over 13 million views on YouTube. 13 million views on a high school basketball game. By his sophomore year, Julian had broken the Florida all-time prep scoring record that had stood since Teddy Dupay set it in 1998, accumulating 3,873 career varsity points. He starred in a documentary called Born Ready in 2015 that followed his daily life and training and drew massive viewership from fans who had become genuinely invested in where his career was heading. In his senior season at Prodigy Prep, a school his father personally founded and built specifically around developing elite basketball talent, Julian averaged 34.7 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, and 4 steals per
God damn, was every play just give the ball to him?
game, 34.7 points a night. So the debate online was real and it was loud. Was Julian Newman going?
You know what? I'm starting to see what the Newman family fucking crawled and walked so the Ball family could run and sprint. That's what it was. They were the original method.
Going to the NBA, was he the next Isaiah Thomas? Were the scouts sleeping on something that everyone watching those highlights already understood? But here's where things start to turn, and this is the part that most people missed while they were watching the mixtapes. There were quieter conversations happening in basketball circles, conversations that told a completely different story from what was playing out on social media. The first issue was competition. Downey Christian School and later Prodigy Prep competed outside the jurisdiction of the Florida High School Athletic Association. That matters enormously. Those programs were not playing against the fully sanctioned elite competition that college coaches relied on when evaluating.
I remember playing against IMG a few times, boy.
Prospects.
Niggas always get the fucking tallest African niggas on their team, bro.
When Julian appeared at high-profile showcases where the opposition had legitimate Power 5 offers and scouts sitting courtside, the gap between the legend and the reality started showing up in ways that couldn't be explained away.
Them schools, I ain't gonna lie, them schools would do the most though. And I know because I played again. I know I haven't been proving it to y'all if y'all have been watching some of my recent hoop activities, bro. I'm just not in the gym, bro. I need to go get some shots up, get back. But long story short, I played basketball at a very high level, and I'm telling you, the things that these motherfuckers used to do to have tall, over, like, super athletic motherfuckers on your team, it just wasn't even morally correct. They changing birth certificates. I'm talking about, there was one kid that got exposed for being a grown-ass man playing against little kids. Flew him in from Africa, changed his birth certificate and some more shit. And guess how they found him? They ended up finding him. I'm not going to say no names because I'm not trying to, get niggas caught up. But the reason they found him is because the nigga done went to the doctor or the dentist to get some braces. And they were like, yo, the dentist was like, this is the mouth of a grown-ass man. This kid is not 16. This nigga is about 22 years old. What the fuck is going on? Mind you, you got this big 22-year-old African, 6'8", fucking getting D1 offers playing with us in goddamn freshman, sophomore year of high school. Bro, the basketball world gets down and dirty when it comes to how they be recruiting niggas and be trying to do the sports shit. I promise you, it's crazy.
Skill was still evident. Nobody was questioning the handle. Nobody doubted the court vision. But next to players who were 6'2", 6'3", with 40-inch verticals and sub-5-second agility numbers, it was a fundamentally different conversation. Which brings us to the second issue. The one everybody was thinking, but nobody wanted to be the first to say out loud. His height. Julian Newman maxed out at 5 feet 5 inches tall. In a league where point guards, the smallest players on the NBA floor, typically stand 6'1" or 6'2", 5'5" is a number that makes professional evaluators go very quiet very fast. The comparisons to Isaiah Thomas circulated constantly online, but Isaiah Thomas stood 5'9". That is still considered remarkably short for the NBA, and Isaiah himself acknowledged that his path to the league was among the hardest any player had navigated in decades. Julian Newman was 4 inches shorter than that. The scouts who evaluate him publicly were consistent. The skill was legitimate. The ceiling at the professional level, given the physical disadvantages he would face on every single possession against every single opponent, was not. Basketball at the Division I level and beyond is a sport where every physical inch matters. Where a 6'2" guard defending a 5'5" guard.
It's just kind of like, nigga, you have to be, which he was, a generational talent, but nigga, there's not much you can do when you have super freak athletes, not just tall, but super freak athletes that are towering over you. All that dribbling, all that hezzy, shot fake, No, it doesn't matter when the nigga is literally towering over you like this. You're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. You could be doing all that fucking head moving, bobbing, ball fake, in and outs. You're not getting past a nigga that's 6'8", playing your position on defense. Come on, man.
Simply put his hand up and erase shots, where a slight size advantage at the point of attack compounds across 40 minutes until it becomes an unsolvable problem. Julian could read a defense as well as anyone his age, but reading a defense means nothing when the defender is long enough to contest everything you see. Scouts also pointed to the competition level question that critics have been raising for years. The scoring records, the viral mixtapes, the 34-point averages, those numbers have been built against opponents who were not the caliber of player or college coach was recruiting to compete in a power conference. When those same basketball instincts got tested in environments with elite opposition and neutral evaluation, the picture became more complicated. And as the competition around him got stronger, faster, and more physically developed through his high school years, the style of play that had made him a legend began running into walls it could not break through. Something had to give. When Julian graduated from Prodigy Prep in 2020, the basketball world waited for a Division I announcement. Jamie Newman went on record claiming his son had received 15 D1 scholarship offers.
That nigga was capping down.
Mentioning programs like Kansas and Florida by name. The major recruiting services had no record of those offers. No official scholarship announcements came through any program's verified channels. Not one. The same player who had his face on the front page of the Sunday New York Times as an 11-year-old could not get a confirmed Division I offer at 18. Viral fame meant absolutely nothing to a college coach trying to build a tournament roster. The only thing that mattered was whether this player could compete against 6'2" guards with pro athleticism. And the honest answer, based on everything the scouting community said publicly, was that he could not. Julian then announced he would skip college and pursue basketball overseas. Germany, China, Italy, Australia, the G League. He laid out the options publicly and told his followers to stay tuned. Nothing materialized. No overseas contract, no professional deal, no announcement. Silence. And then something that nobody who grew up watching those YouTube highlights would have predicted happened. Julian Newmans stopped playing organized basketball, not for a month, not for a semester, for 4 years, from 2020 to 2024. One of the most famous basketball players in internet history did not compete in a single organized game.
I do want to say though, and I don't know Julian Newman, I don't want to spread too much hate. It's tough, bro. Because when you are an athlete, bro, so much of being an athlete, especially if you're playing at a high level, is like, yo, I'm going to the league. I'm going. You know, we see the dreams, we see the success stories. So, you know, you get fascinated, you get inspired by it. It's like, I'm not going to quit, bro. I'm all in. And if you ain't get no major injuries, you kind of like, nah, I'm going to the league. And that's the mentality that so many of us athletes have adopted. And what ends up happening, bro, you wake up one day, you fucking 18, 19, 21, 22, and you still kind of chasing this hoop dream, which has been your entire life. All you've done is live and breathe basketball or football or baseball, this sport, and you haven't accomplished it. And you're looking at your peers or peers that, you know, maybe you don't know them, but they're in the league at your age, and you kind of start having an identity crisis because you didn't accomplish your goal. You're at the age where you should be in the league, and now you have to ask yourself, what the fuck was my entire life? Not in my past couple months, not in my past couple years. No, like, I've been playing basketball since I was fucking in 5th grade, and now I'm a grown-ass man. The classes that I took in high school and college, I breezed through. You know, in college, I didn't really study shit like that because all I cared about was basketball. I just took whatever class to get good grades so I can focus on basketball. That is a lot of athletes' life. And then when it's all said and done, they're just kind of left in an identity crisis. They don't know nothing else. They damn near don't even know how to have relationships and deal with people the right way because they didn't do that. And I resonate with that because that was me, my nigga. I was the nigga just in the gym all day, no partying, no drinking, no smoking, super disciplined. No, I'm going. Ball is life. I'm locked in. And again, I'm grateful for a lot of the things that life has taught me, but at the same time, it held me back because I wasn't living. I was just working, you know? And I'm not hooping no more. Goddamn, I'm ashamed of myself when I be hooping now. Because of how fucking rusty I be. And I'm just like, it's just crazy, bro.
4 years, let that land. This is a person who had been competing since he was 3 years old, who had played varsity basketball since the 5th grade, whose entire identity as constructed by his family and amplified by a global audience was inseparable from the game of basketball. And after graduating high school with no Division I offer, no professional contract, and no verifiable overseas opportunity, despite what his father had promised publicly, Julian simply went quiet from organized competition. He stayed visible through social media, training footage, lifestyle content, occasional skill videos that reminded his followers he still had the handle, still had the vision, still had the same fearlessness that had made him famous a decade earlier. His name still pulled clicks because the nostalgia around his story was powerful. YouTube documentaries kept revisiting him, podcasts kept asking what happened, sports journalists and content creators kept checking back in, hoping for an update that would resolve the open question his career had become. But competitive basketball? Gone. The thing that had defined him since before he was old enough to go to school had disappeared disappeared from his life at the exact moment most players his age were first getting serious about the professional pathway. It raised a question that nobody around Julian answered publicly. Was this a strategic pause, training privately, waiting for the right overseas opportunity, preparing for a real run at professional
It's over with. It's time to put the shoes and the ball up, bro.
ball? Or had the reality of where his career stood finally caught up with the narrative that had been built around him for a decade? The truth, as it almost always does, probably lives somewhere in between those two answers. And then in June 2024, Julian Newman made an announcement that surprised a lot of people. He committed to Bethesda University, not Division I, not Division II, not even a traditional NAIA program. Bethesda University is a small Christian institution in Anaheim, California, competing in the National Christian College Athletic Association. By any objective measure, it is the furthest point from the NBA that a career can land while still technically calling itself college basketball. Julian enrolled that fall at 23 years old, making him one of the oldest freshmen in his program. His collegiate debut came on October 24th, 2024, against the Masters University. He came off the bench. He played 9 minutes. He went scoreless, going 0 for 6 from three-point range. His team lost by 86 points.
86 points? Nah, bro, you gotta implement some mercy rules. But like with that, what the fuck? You down by 40, just go ahead and drop the mercy on them, man. 86? Did I hear that right? The team lost by 86? What the fuck was y'all doing? Just laying the basket? Hey, just go ahead and score. You couldn't have been playing the defense. There's no reason why anyone should be losing by 86 points.
6 from three-point range. His team lost by 86 points. Sit with that number, 86 points. That was not a one-time result. Through the 2024 to 2025 season, Julian averaged 1.9 points per game on 16.3% shooting. His career high at Bethesda University was 6 points, set in a game on November 13th, 2024. A game his team lost 107 to 54.
What the fuck? Nigga, at that point you were better off just joining the men's league, my nigga. Why did you put yourself through this embarrassment and humiliation ritual? What? You just getting blown out by 90 points every game?
3-point blowout on the road. The player who averaged 34 points a night during his high school senior season was scoring less than 2 points a game at an NAIA Christian college in Anaheim, California. The internet did not handle this quietly. The same social media ecosystem that has spent 12 years building Julian Newman into a legend was
gonna turn on your ass. That's the internet good for that.
Now cataloging his Bethesda box scores in real time. Reaction videos went up within hours of every game. Twitter threads dissected his shooting splits. YouTube channels built entire videos around his stat line. Comment sections that had once debated whether he was going to be an all-star were now making very different arguments. And that is the part of this story that carries a weight beyond the basketball numbers. Most players who develop at a slower pace than expected get to do so privately. They fail in gyms that don't have cameras. They get cut from rosters that nobody is tracking. They work through their development struggles away from any kind of audience. Julian Newman has never had that, not once in his life. The 5th grader who had People magazine photographers at his games grew into the 23-year-old whose NIA box scores were being screenshotted and posted to social media within hours. The price of that level of early fame is that the audience never fully goes away. And when the performance stops matching the legend, the audience gets to watch that in real time too. By mid-2025, Julian stepped away from basketball and began training for boxing at Fortune Gym in Los Angeles. The logic made sense in its own way. His hand speed from years of elite ball handling gave him a natural foundation that most boxers grind for years to develop from scratch. His reflexes, his footwork, his competitive psychology forged through a lifetime of being the smallest person in every competition he ever entered. Those transferred. His social media presence gave him genuine promotional value in the celebrity boxing space that had grown into a legitimate industry through the success of figures like Jake Paul and
Okay, hold on. Is this little success story coming on?
others who had turned internet fame into pay-per-view business. And boxing, crucially, does not have a height cutoff. Weight classes make height and reach relevant, but they do not disqualify you the way a league of 6'4" athletes does. Julian Newman, who has spent his entire life being told that his size was the thing standing between him and greatness, found himself in a sport where that specific argument doesn't apply the same way. Whether boxing becomes a genuine chapter in his story or another destination that doesn't quite land the way he hopes is still playing out. But what the pivot tells you about him is something his Bethesda stat line never could. He has not quit. He has not walked away from competition.
Which I can respect. Which I can always respect.
He has not accepted a quiet exit. At 24, he is still grinding, still betting on himself. The dream has changed shape, but the fire has not gone out. Now here's the bigger question, the one that Julian Newman's story forces you to sit with whether you want to or not. Was any of this inevitable? When you pull back and look at the full arc of what happened here, a pattern emerges that goes far beyond Julian specifically. Jamie Newman recognized extraordinary talent in the child and made a deliberate decision to market that talent as aggressively as possible, as early as possible. He put his son on national television before Julian was old enough to understand what national television meant. He built a school around his son's basketball ambitions. He created an entire environment where Julian was not a kid who played basketball, he was basketball. A brand, a headline, a destiny. And the qualities that made those early clips so compelling, the fearlessness competing against players twice his age, the handle, the swagger, those qualities were cultivated inside an ecosystem specifically engineered to produce them on camera. In that ecosystem, they looked extraordinary, but the ecosystem was not the NBA. It was not the Big 12. It was not even close to the level of competition those worlds required. And by the time Julian was old enough to be tested against a real standard, the distance between the legend and the reality had grown too wide to close. Forbes ran a piece back in 2014 questioning whether the media was wrong to be hyping a 12-year-old the way it was hyping Julian Newman. The argument was straightforward. Taking a child's athletic performance seriously enough to declare a professional destiny before adolescence creates expectations that the child will have to carry for the rest of their career, fair or not. At the time, most people dismissed that argument because the highlights were too good to resist. A decade later, that piece reads differently. Compare that arc to Kyrie Walker, the same player Julian went viral against in 2016. Walker built a conventional development path, earned legitimate Power 5 scholarship offers, competed at elite sanction levels throughout high school, and built a real professional trajectory from there. The difference between those two careers was not purely physical tools, it was development philosophy. The goal in Walker's career was to maximize his ceiling as a basketball competitor. The goal in Julian's story, at least as it appears from the outside, increasingly shifted over time toward maximizing his visibility as a basketball personality. Those two goals are not the same thing, and when they diverge early enough and hard enough, the consequences follow a player for the rest of their career. Julian's sister Jaden followed a similar viral trajectory and eventually signed with a Division I college program. Same family, same environment, different outcome. Which tells you this story does not reduce neatly to any single explanation. It is not simply the height, it is not simply the marketing, it is not simply the school choices or the scheduling or the competition level. It is all of those things layered on top of each other over years, compounding quietly until the gap becomes impossible to ignore. What keeps Julian Newman's name generating content years after his original moment of fame is something real. People who watch those highlights as kids carry a genuine emotional stake in his story. He represented something for a lot of them. The undersized kid who refused to be told he couldn't compete. The fifth grader tightening his jersey with a hair tie who was still the best player on the floor. He made kids who were too small and too slow and too young believe that those things didn't have to define them. That is not a small thing. It is actually a significant thing. And it explains why his name never fully disappears from sports media. The curiosity around what happened to him is driven partly by nostalgia and partly by something more complicated. A feeling among the people who rooted for him that the story owes them a better ending than the one they got. But here is something worth considering. Julian Newman's impact on youth basketball and sports media culture is genuinely undeniable, regardless of what happened to his professional career. He was the first. Before there was a cottage industry of youth basketball social media content, before AAU highlight compilations were a standard part of recruiting culture, before fathers everywhere learned that a well-produced highlight reel could change a kid's visibility overnight. Julian Newman was the proof of concept. He and his father figured out something that the entire industry eventually followed. The blueprint for marketing a youth basketball player through the internet was written in a gym at Downey Christian School in Orlando, Florida in 2012. Every kid who built a social media following before they graduated high school owes something to what Julian Newman proved was possible. Even if nobody intended to build a blueprint, even if the career that followed didn't match the promise of the original moment, the impact was real and it lasted. The truth about Julian Newman's career is not simply that he failed. The truth is that the story told about him was always larger than what the sport was going to allow. The gap between those two things became the defining narrative of his life in a very public, very permanent way. He was handed a destiny before he was old enough to choose his own. He spent his entire career chasing something the world had told him was already his. And at 24, he is still in the gym somewhere, still figuring out what he actually wants to build. That is not a tragedy in the traditional sense. It is something more complicated and more honest than that. It is what happens when the internet decides a child is great before greatness has been proven, when marketing outpaces development, when a legend gets constructed faster than a player can grow into it. Julian Newman did not create that problem. He inherited it at 11 years old, standing 4 feet 5 inches tall in a jersey held together by a hair tie. Or whatever comes next for him, boxing, content creation, something nobody has thought to predict yet, the work ethic that Jamie Newman built into his son from the time he was old enough to hold a basketball is still in there. That part was never manufactured. That part was never a highlight reel. The kid always worked. The story just got written before he had the chance to finish it. And that, more than any box score or recruiting ranking or stat line, is the part of Julian Newman's journey that stays with you long after the video ends. Drop a comment and tell us.
W video, man. Shout out to Julian Newman. I think hopefully the boxing thing can work out, but if not, I think hopefully he could take just content creation seriously. Yeah, there's so much content behind basketball that, you know, niggas aren't in the league that people are making, whether it's talking about basketball, whether it's, you know, tournaments, 1-on-1 tournaments, 3-on-3 tournaments. I'm seeing so much dope shit that he could tap into. So genuinely very dope video to get a lot of backstory on him. Did y'all know who Julian Newman was? This is your first time hearing about him? Did you guys used to watch the mixtapes, the hoop mixtapes, the Ball is Life, man? Let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Where you at, family?
Where you at, Berto?